Back here with Antoine Walker talking Game 7 last night, Clippers-Nuggets. Clippers trying to avoid a total meltdown after once again being up 3-1 in a series. They needed Kawhi and PG to come up big. That didn't happen, both with brutal shooting nights. Kawhi, 14 points on 6 of 22 from the field. Paul George, 10 points on 4 of 16 shooting. That's not going to get it done. Denver now moving on to the Western Conference Finals, first time since 2009, while the Clippers are packed up and headed west. Here is Paul George after the game.
Fact of the matter is we didn't live up to that expectation. But I think internally we've always felt this is not a championship or bust year for us. We can only get better the longer we stay together and the more we're around each other. The more chemistry for this group, the better. I think that's really the tale of the tape of the season. We just didn't have enough time together.
All right, so Antoine, what does this mean now for the Clippers, for Kawhi and the Clippers and Paul George moving forward?
Well, you got to start from the top. We alluded to this earlier. You got to start with Doc Rivers. You got to make a decision if, one, is he going to be your coach and how much he's going to demand from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And what I mean by that is making Kawhi practice more so he gets more, just chemistry, more chemistry with his guys, holding those two guys accountable on defending the other team's best perimeter players. I thought he hit them guys all during the bubble and during the playoffs where those guys should have been guarding the best players on other teams. And then you got to go to this roster. They got some valuable pieces on this roster that are not signed. You got Morris and Montrezl Harrell, Reggie Jackson, Patrick Patterson. So you got to fill those 4 spots too as well. Those guys were intricate parts of this team this year. So you got to figure that out. The good thing they do have going for themselves is that they do have, obviously Kawhi and Paul George under contract. Patrick Beverly comes back. Lou Williams did not have a great playoff series. You got to start thinking about him. Father Time could catch up with him. He's getting much older. I think he's going to his 16th or 17th year coming up after next year. So you got some things you got to address on this team. The roster, of course, you got to address and also you got to add, the Western Conference is only going to get harder. Golden State will be back next year. The Phoenix Suns look very promising. So you got better teams. The Denver Nuggets can really catapult this situation that catapult this situation. So the Western Conference is only going to get tougher. It's not going to get easier. So thinking you're just going to turn it around next year and it's going to be a cakewalk for you to get there because you learned your lesson is not going to happen. So they got to continue to improve this roster. And Doc, I think, is going to have to put the hammer down. He's going to have to coach these guys very tough with a lot of discipline and have a no-nonsense matter if you want to win a championship.
All right, listen, folks. We've been on the air 1 hour and 6 minutes, and I have waited and wondered if someone else would do this. I was waiting and wondering during the broadcast if anyone was going to do it during the meltdown last night, and it looks like the responsibility is going to fall on me, so I guess I'll do it. Anyone going to talk about Kawhi? He was dreadful. And by the way, dreadful it doesn't really tell the story. It's not just 6 of 22. It's 1 of 11 with 2 points in the second half. It's not getting to the free throw line once the entire game. And it is a player who demanded rest so he would be fresh for the postseason, falling apart at the end of these games. First half, second half. Look at it. Show me his fourth quarters. Show me Kawhi Leonard's fourth quarters, 3 of which in this series he scored 0 points. Does that look like a guy who's supposed to be in contention for the best player in the league? It doesn't. But here's the problem for Kawhi. He has no help. He built the roster.
He has
Brandon.
no help.
They had. Hold on, Brandon. Wait a second. That would be a legitimate excuse if he didn't choose to leave the Raptors, who, by the way, got exactly as far as the Clippers did this year, except their Game 7 was competitive, and they didn't blow a 3-1 lead, and they didn't need 6 games in the first round. But set that aside. He left the Raptors, and he demanded they trade for Paul George. He's the one that set the tone on load management.
He's the one who let New Balance run the commercial saying it's my city. Think about this. But think about this. Wouldn't you be tired if you had to carry this team throughout the entire, not only playoffs, but the whole time in a bubble? Think about that. And Twan, you said something, and Nick, I've heard you say it for an entire year now about this whole load management thing. Twan, you would still be in the NBA right now if there was load management back then. So I don't understand why people don't embrace load management, especially you, Twan, as a player. Me as a player,
here's why.
Thinking about the first half of my career, I took every snap, 70 plays a game, every practice rep in practice. And then in the second half of my career, we start scaling it back a little bit. And I was fresher when it came to Sundays. It came to Monday night games.
That's fine.
So, Twan, I don't understand this. Nick, I don't understand why you guys are so against load management.
Well,
listen, it's one thing. Wait, real quick, Antoine. It's one thing to give guys 5 to 7 games off a year, the way Popovich created it and the way it was meant to be. But when you do it to the degree the Clippers did it, you lose out on chemistry. And Antoine, Kawhi Leonard had not clearly built up the armor, if you will, to be able to sustain 40-plus minutes at his efficiency. Folks can talk all they want about LeBron's heavy minutes throughout his career. The reason he can peak in the postseason is it's not odd for him to play 40-plus minutes.
No, because he load managed in the game. He load managed in the game. No, he's not conditioned for the first half of his career, LeBron played lights out throughout the entire game. Second half of his career, this back half of his career, LeBron James barely moves. Come on now, you've seen this. He's like Messi on the soccer field. They barely move, and it's been highly talked about, and you know this. Right, Twan? Thank you.
No, listen. I'm gonna add this. Listen. Brandon, you want to play every game. Like I want to play every game. I was not a practice guy,
that's right.
but I played for coaches that demanded me to practice every day, and they figure out how to get you in and out. So my thing with Kawhi Leonard is you cannot build team chemistry and get everything on when you're taking multiple days off, games off. You can't just turn it on and off in the NBA. And that's not the reason they lost. My problem with Kawhi Leonard was not about Game 7. My problem with Kawhi Leonard started back when you chose to leave Toronto Raptors. When you chose to leave a team that obviously you could have got to probably multiple finals in the Eastern Conference, and you chose not to do it, and you want to put this team together in California, and the Clippers, and you got Game 7 and you don't show up. That's what bothers me about Kawhi Leonard, because you have to show up. So you got to stop the argument. I'm tired of the arguments when you compare him to LeBron James and these different guys.
Not a comparison.
And you don't show up when it counts. You got to stop that because he's been very good over the last 2 years. But you do. He does sit out too much. Brandon, he does shoot out too. He does sit out too much.
Just last series we were talking about he was Mr. Consistent. Just last series we put up his stats and a graphic talking about how consistent he is.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden he's the worst player in America.
No, he fell apart.